Have you ever received any scam messages that claims that you have won certain amount and is ready to be credited? Today's story is based on one such scam message that completely changed a life of an innocent girl and her family. Today, we are going to discuss about one of the brutal case of Nepal. This case was so brutal that it drew a lot of attention of people and made many news headlines. Khyati Shrestha was 19-year-old, a 12th grade student at the Jubilant college in the capital city of Kathmandu. Khyati was the only child of parents, Radha and Gopal Shrestha. She was a super bright student and had excelled in her 10th grade exams. Khyati loved to dance and took part in several cultural programs in her school over the years. Her dream was to become a pilot. Back in 2006, her family lived in a different city 250 miles south of Kathmandu called Biratnagar. They had moved to Kathmandu only so that Khyati could study at a good college and pursue her dreams. When they made the big move, they rented an apartment in Kathmandu at a place called Balaju. This apartment belonged to biology teacher Biren Pradhan Shrestha, who also privately tutored Khyati often. The landlord Biren abruptly decided to sell his property after a year, and so the family had to move again. This time they chose a location much closer to Khyati's college in an area called Gatakulo. Khyati was also very fond of traveling to new places. On June 5, 2009, at 8 a.m., Khyati received a phone call on the landline from a female caller. She was told by the caller that she had won a prize of $265 and a free trip to Pokhara from a popular Nepali women's magazine called Vow. She was asked to come at 1 p.m. to a spot called Putali Sadak to claim the prize. A male friend from her neighborhood accompanied Khyati to that location just as a precaution. When Khyati and her friend reached there, a very young-looking girl came to receive them and told them that Khyati had to fill out a form, then give an interview for the magazine, and only then would she be handed the prize. Seeing a woman there, the neighbor was assured of Khyati's safety, and so he left. Khyati and the girl then took a taxi and traveled to an apartment in an area called Kusibu, where she was met with the worst fate she couldn't have imagined when she woke up that day. Khyati's parents called her at 2:30 p.m., but the call went unanswered. By the evening, they were worried sick and restless to hear from their daughter. Their worries were confirmed that evening when an SMS was received. The SMS said Khyati had been kidnapped and that the kidnappers demand a hefty ransom of $13,000. The kidnappers warned them not to contact police or Khyati would be killed. They claimed to be an infamous gang from Terai region of Nepal. Criminal gangs were notorious in Terai region, so when they heard that name, it sent a wave of terror in their minds. It took a few days, but Gopal and Radha Shrestha somehow managed to put together the amount and waited for further instructions. The kidnappers messaged Khyati's parents several times for ransom drops. Without any delay, Khyati's parents, along with their domestic helper Ram, left for the journey to bring back their daughter. But the kidnappers were continuously confusing them by calling them to different locations, possibly to evade police. At one point, Khyati's parents were sent with the ransom to an Indo-Nepal border town of Sonali, some 170 miles from Kathmandu. They reached the drop-off location, but nobody came to pick up the money. They were further asked to come to the towns of Butwal, Chitwan, and even to Darjeeling, India. When they reached Darjeeling, India crossing Indo-Nepal border, they were again called back to Nepal to a border town called Kakarbita. On June 17th, Khyati's mother Radha went to Kakarbita, 12 days after the kidnapping, to hand over the ransom of $130,000 to save their beloved Khyati. They were given an address of a hotel at Kakarbita. Their domestic helper Ram accompanied her on this trip and was the one who went to hand over the money. He was sent back alone by kidnappers after taking the money. They immediately returned to Kathmandu and waited for a day, hoping that perhaps Khyati would be released any minute as per the agreement. But that did not happen. On the second day, the Shrestha's notified the police. Police tried their best and went to every ransom drop-off location where Khyati's parents were called. They investigated to find some clue, but found nothing. Meanwhile, they were getting reported of body parts found at different locations within 300 ESL radius of their surrounding at Kathmandu. After a few days, they called Khyati's parents and asked if they have found anything suspicious during their journey of ransom drop-off. Then Khyati's mother said she was surprised to spot their old landlord Biren Pradhan around the area. This struck her as extremely odd, and she expressed her doubts to family about Biren being involved somehow with the kidnapping. Police then searched for Biren and caught him back in Kathmandu on June 21st, 17 days after Khyati was last seen. After the cops grilled and interrogated Biren, he finally confessed to the crime. They found out that just a week before the kidnapping, Biren had actually dropped into the Shrestha home to visit with Gopal and Radha. At that visit, Khyati's father had mentioned to Biren how well Khyati was doing and that they were planning to send her to America for higher education next year. He knew that if anyone is going to the U.S. to study, they would need a lot of money to do that. He realized that the Shrestha's had probably been scrimping and saving for a while and had likely collected a good amount by now. He had to get his hands on that money somehow, and that is when he came up with this plan. He revealed on the day when Khyati went to receive the prize, the interviewer was none other than Biren Pradhan. She was shocked to see Biren there, and Biren acted surprised too, so to convince her that it was a real interview. The young girl who had called up Khyati and posed as the magazine rep was a 16-year-old girl named Marina Shakya. Marina was an ex-student from the Adarsh Vidya Mandir school that Biren used to teach at. Biren had groomed Marina into a relationship and convinced her to go along with the kidnapping. Then they gave her a cold drink laced with sedatives. She fell unconscious for a few hours. When she woke up, she was struck with panic and confusion and started to scream. Then Biren tried to knock out Khyati with chloroform, and he then chopped up her body into 10 different pieces when she was unconscious and disposed them in different locations in the Kathmandu area. Turns out the body parts they found at Kathmandu were of Khyati's. The medical examiner concluded that Khyati had been killed either on the day of or the day after she had been abducted. He also noted that there were several blunt trauma wounds on Khyati's head, and as per his confession, Biren had hit her with an iron rod to make sure she was dead after the chloroform. This means Biren had gone ahead with the ransom collection, knowing fully well he had already murdered Khyati and callously scattered her remains all over Nepal. This story shook all the Nepali parents of Nepal that till date, they don't reveal any future plan they have for their children to any other. The people of Nepal were devastated to hear of such a gruesome crime. Protests, rallies, and public discussions took place all of Nepal. High schools were closed for several days after the story came out in the news. People expressed their frustration with the law and order situation in the country and demanded the judicial system give Biren and Marina the worst possible sentence. They wanted them hanged. Nepal did not have capital punishment at that time, so after a prompt court case, a year later Biren was sentenced to 39 years in jail, and Marina, still a juvenile at that time, was awarded 34 years in jail despite her young age. Nepal will never forget their Khyati, who is memorialized in the hearts of the people as a bright young girl who dreamed to fly one day.